So I'm going to show you how I do this version of the mask. So it's the pleated style with the filter pocket and a nose piece. So what we need is the front fabric and the back fabric. And this is optional. I do use an interfacing. You don't have to if you don't have any, but I prefer them like that because it gives it a little bit more body. So what we're going to do is put the front piece down and the back piece down. And actually, before I finish doing that, I'm going to show you this other little piece, which is, this is going to be the pocket that the elastic goes into, and then of course my elastic, which is already cut. And I probably should give you measurements too. So measurements are, I do 8 inches wide for both pieces. The back piece is 6 inches and the front piece is 9 inches. The elastic I cut to about 8.5, 9 inches, somewhere in that range. And this piece, which is the side pieces, I cut about 4 inches by about 2 inches. So those are rough measurements. It just depends on the size of the mask that you're making. Okay, so getting started. We are going to lay the front piece down and the back piece down. This is going to be where the opening is going to go. And so we're going to need to stitch here and leave it open between my fingers. And we need about 1.5 inches. And just conveniently, that is 1 inch and that is about 1.5 inches. So I need about that much and about that much. So I'm going to stitch and make sure you back stitch on both ends, and then move it over here and stitch about that much. Okay, that's all there is to that step. Just trim off your threads if you are like me and have to do that because it bothers you. Turn on the iron, and what we're going to do next is we are going to press this seam open. But it's a little difficult because you've got that gap there. So what I like to do, let me get the elastic out of the way so we don't burn that, is I start by just pressing the whole thing, because a lot of times this fabric gets kind of, you can see all the wrinkles in there, and it just makes it easier if it's all nice and pressed flat. The next thing I do is I go like that, so that I am folding it to one side. Then I turn it over and I kind of pull it apart here with one hand. Sometimes it's a little hard. There it is. Okay. And then I'm going to press it flat. So I've already pressed this side. See how there's a nice crease there? So I just have to kind of hold down the other side and press. There we go. Okay, good. Turn off the iron, get it out of the way, and now we're going to put in the nose piece. Now I've already done the nose pieces. The previous video that I did, I showed them like this, where I had sandwiched it in between an inch layer of fusible interfacing. And this time I have started to do a wider piece that's 1.5 inches, and I folded it over. So now the nose piece, it's a little hard to see, but it's right at the bottom of the crease of the interfacing. Whereas this one, there's still some interfacing hanging over. This is just a faster method to do it. So what we're going to end up doing is putting the nose piece right here. So we're going to stitch all of this down so that it keeps the seam allowance from popping up. So put that in the machine. And doesn't matter if you go all the way to the end or not. Turn it around. Sew a little ways, and then I've made a template that shows where this piece is going to go. So I'm going to lay my template down. There's my 2 marks. This is going to slide in so that the excess interfacing is going underneath of the seam allowance. And now I'm going to stitch over the seam allowance with the interfacing. Okay, so that nose piece is now in there. You can also do the same technique with a wire. If you don't have any of these flat nose pieces, it works exactly the same. So now I'm going to take the whole thing, fold it over, and stitch the other seam. Then I turn it right sides out. Turn my iron back on because we're going to need that. Make sure everything looks good. Okay, now I can feel the nose wire, it's right, or the nose piece here. So I'm going to fold it over, and you can fold it over either this way where it's shorter or longer. It depends on how you feel like constructing it. I like it this way. That's the way I've been doing it this whole time. Lay it flat, make sure it's even, because you're going to stitch now to hold that nose piece in place. And we want to make sure not to stitch over the nose piece itself because it is metal, so you need to feel for it and kind of eyeball where it's going to go. There it is right there, so it's not under the needle. Okay, so that nose piece is in. It's not going to come out. It's nicely and very firmly stitched in. There's the filter pocket. Now we're going to press. And I just use the iron to weigh it down. Hold the other end and press. And everything is all nice and flat and happy. Okay, now my handy dandy little pleater. I'm going to put the mask on top of the pleater, push it in, push it down, and press. Need to press this for a little while because we need to make sure those pleats get in there. Okay, now turn it over and hold on to both ends as I gently pull this out. Get it out of the way and then push it down and kind of work the pleats in where you want them, making sure that both sides are even, and they are. And press the back. Turn it over. Press the front. And turn off the iron because we don't need it anymore. And there we go. We've got some nice pleats in there. Okay, so the next step, and this one actually turned out pretty good, but you may end up a little bit with some of the back sticking out funny or threads or whatever, so we're going to just chop those off, get them out of the way, get rid of the excess threads. Yeah, see, there was a little excess fabric there, so get rid of that. Okay, good. That's nice and clean. Now, here's those two end pieces. Actually, let me show you this one before I put the end pieces on. Sometimes I forget and I put the end piece on right sides together on the front. And what happens when you do that is you end up having this line of stitching on the front, and it's not as pretty. It looks fine on the back, but not on the front. So I put the piece on the back. And what I'm going to do is put it here, fold the edges around, do about a quarter-inch, a little over a quarter-inch seam. Make sure you back stitch. Fold the other end under and stitch. Do the same exact thing on the other side. So I'm putting it like this. I'm folding this end under and stitch. Fold this end under and stitch. Okay, take the two ends, pop them out. Okay, so that's what we end up with now. Now the next part, and this is going to sound a little strange, what you want to do is you pull this piece in at a slight angle. If you pull it out straight, I'll show you what happens if you pull it out straight. Now I'm just finger pressing, I'm using my fingernail to just do a light little crease in the fabric. If I fold it over like this and like this, the edges will come off of the end. See that? So instead, if you pull it in just a little bit, finger press, do the same thing on the other side. Just pull it in slightly and pull it in slightly. And you don't need to press this. If you just give it a good tug, that's all it really needs. And then I fold this in. This is about a little over 1/4 of an inch or so. Fold that over, and now I'm going to stitch it down. Make sure you back stitch. And trim off your thread tails because it looks ugly. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we've already finger pressed that side. Fold, fold, grab, and stitch. Trim off the tails. And there we go. So the next part is to put in the elastic. And you may not have one of these. This is my preferred method for installing elastic. And what I'll do is I'll take that, push it through, and grab my elastic and pull it through. You want to make sure that, see, that got twisted. Don't let it get twisted. There we go. Do the same thing on the other side. Pull the elastic through, and then all we have to do is overlap the elastic by about 1/2 inch or so, and stitch. Now this machine does not have a zigzag, so I have to do a straight stitch with it. So I just go over it several times just to make sure it's not going to come apart. Do the same thing on this side. And trim off your thread. And then pull that through, pull it through, and it's done.